Hello and welcome to Open Your Mind Radio. You have myself, Alan James.
And myself, Stephen George. Good evening.
Good evening. It's Sunday, the 21st of May, 2017, and we have a packed show, loads of information to talk about. And we have our guest, which is Diarmaid Ó Cadhla. Diarmaid's going to be talking to us about his background and politics, and maybe the water charges and the property charges and loads of stuff like that, things that are going on in Ireland, and maybe one or two global things as well. We'll see what happens anyway. But before we carry on, let's find out what the communication channels are.
Yes, communication channels are...
The communication channels are email info@oymireland.com, by phone 046 927 1212, and you can also contact us direct through the OYM chat room.
Yes, the phone number again, 046 927 1212. If you're calling in from outside the Republic of Ireland, it's 00353 469 271212. And as we've said previously, the phone system is a little bit flaky because it is an internet-based phone system. So if you do ring and you don't get through first time, please do try again. What else have we got? We have the chat room. OYMradio.com is the website. You will see all the links there for all the different parts of the site, including the chat room, the anti-social media, Facebook, Twitter, etc., etc. Obviously that is the place to put your questions for a guest this evening. We also monitor People's Internet Radio chat room as well. So a big hi to everyone who's logged into both of the chat rooms. You're all very welcome in this kind of I don't know, what would you call it? Weather-wise, it's kind of unpredictable.
It's all over the place, really, isn't it?
All over the place. It absolutely is. It's supposed to be summer, but as you always say, the rain is warm.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a positive.
That's how you know it's summer, yeah. In Ireland, the 4 seasons in one day. Yeah.
We also have the very last thing, the TuneIn Radio application. There is a link there on the website as well. It's a free app for your iPhone or your smartphone. Stick it on. You can listen to us 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Alan.
Cheers, Steve. Right, before I pass it off to you, just to say a big thank you to all the listeners who send in emails and links and information about things that are going on. Very important. We do have a look at them and we do filter them through. We do get a lot of emails in. So just a big thank you. We kind of pick out the emails that we feel, or the information we feel is, of most important, really. Or maybe what we'll do is 1 week we mightn't read it out 1 week, but we'll read it out in another week, and do it that way. But Steve is going to start us off with something that was sent in to us.
Yeah, this is from listener JJ, and JJ says, this story is of national importance. He says, did you hear of the pig farmer that got a year in prison last week? This is not a joke. A few years ago, he was ordered by a judge to demolish his piggery. The judge signed the order, and this is important later on in the story. The pig farmer took the roofs off some of the pig's sheds. Now the piggery is massive and situated in the Midlands, not too far from the Shannon. Under the floor, not too far from Shannon, sorry. Under the floor of the piggery, there are massive tanks of slurry. When the farmer removed the roof, there was asbestos in the roof. Residue from the roof fell into the tanks. Longford County Council now have been ordered by the court to take over the emptying of the tanks. Longford County Council did not have the experience to undertake this task. The tanks were now filling up with rainwater. The council had slurry spreaders taking the contaminated slurry with the asbestos and spreading it on local land. Longford County Council ran out of money and asked the EU for some funding. As this farm had thousands and thousands of gallons of asbestos-contaminated slurry, the EU did give some funding. This funding, as you can guess, soon ran out. At the moment, the tanks are filling up again with rainwater and the contaminated slurry. This slurry will soon leak and make its way into the Shannon. The farm in question is located near where Dublin actually gets its drinking water. The drinking water contaminated with asbestos can take up to 30 years, it says, in your body to manifest into asbestosis. Because the judge signed the order, the responsibility is now on the state to pay for all the clean-up of the area. I think taxes are going to be going up to clean up that one.
That's going to be pretty bad to have asbestos in the drinking water. It's bad enough for fluoride, but now if there's a potential of contamination with asbestos, that's going to be a major issue. Now they're going to try and shut that up if it is happening, and it has happened, then they're going to be shutting that up and keeping it quiet. So tell everybody.
And maybe stick a little bit of thalidomide in there as well.
And let them know. Okay, Natural News, from the website Natural News. I believe this was sent over by a listener as well. It would seem that Sweden's parliament truly cares about doing what is best for its people. Not like the Irish government over here. Rather than bowing to pressure by the pharmaceutical companies or the scare tactics of the mainstream media, the Swedish government recently adopted a decision to refuse to enforce the compulsory or mandatory vaccination of its citizens, which seems to be going on quite a lot with countries wanting to do this. Such a mandate, they noted, would violate the country's constitution, and I'm sure would violate our constitution as well. Other factors also influenced the decision. For one thing, many people had called politicians or the parliament directly to express their outrage at the concept of forced vaccinations. The text of one of the motions related to the decision noted that parliamentary politicians had observed massive resistance to all forms of coercion with regard to vaccination. So there you go, folks. If you disagree with forced vaccinations, then obviously you're going to have to email your TD, local TD, because they all they care about is votes. And if enough people email the local TD, it's not happening over here in Ireland, but there was that doc that we had on last week, who Dr. Rory Hanley or something, who was suggesting that people should have forced vaccinations. I mean, seriously, these people are on a different planet completely. So there you go, Steve.
Yes, it says here, Fine Gael leadership says Enda Kenny to step down after Easter. Easter? So Easter's been and gone.
Oh no, sorry, that's I think it's.
Is that a typo?
That's probably a typo.
Is it continued on the other page,
but,
Alan?
No,
it's not.
Sorry, it's a typo. But he is stepping down.
He is
stepping down, and it's going to be Tweedledum, Tweedledee, isn't it? It's going to be. Of
course it is. I mean, some other puppet is just going to take over.
Same circus, you know, different clowns, same circus, you know, and that's the way it is. And of course, Leo is going to be the star child to be lined up to actually take the next position. You know?
Leo Varadkar.
Exactly.
No one likes him either.
Exactly. Look, I don't know why people don't wake up to what's going on. I really, really don't. I don't understand it. They're all parasites. And they're all, you know, they love spending our money. And that's why they spend all the money, because it's not their money, it's their money. And that's why they're very fluid with the money and spending the money. I don't know why people don't see it. You know, it just amazes me that, you know, people like, you know, they're still supporting. Oh, I'm a Fine Gael supporter, I'm a Fianna Fáil supporter.
My father was a Fianna Fáil supporter, and my father's father.
Yeah, exactly. It's like supporting a football team. It really is ridiculous. How's your week anyway?
Yeah, my week's been fine. Just a couple of things to mention. As you mentioned earlier on in relation to vaccinations, this was something that was brought to my attention during the week by my wife. I want to thank her for that. And I don't know if you heard about this. It was on one of the one of the national stations, I believe. And it is in relation to the HSE director suggests chocolates as an incentive for nurses to get vaccinations. Now, seemingly a lot of the nurses, they're not going for the flu jab. Now, I don't know why they're not going for the flu jab. Maybe the nurses are starting to wake up. But it doesn't matter why they're not getting them. But the HSE have decided that, you know, we'll offer them a box of chocolates. Because if we give them a box of chocolates as an incentive to get the flu jab, then that's going to work. The Irish Nurses and Midwives Organisations, the INMO, Liam Doran, their response was, he said it was a perfect example of why nurses and midwives walked away from the Irish health sector. He also said it was another example of someone distantly removed being condescending, patronising and insulting to nurses and midwives. Liam Doran said that that kind of comment was totally objectionable, and Dr. Keller should respect nurses' opinions and not treat them like children. Now,
I mean, I found that I had a quick read of that article, and you have to really understand, I suppose, this is the arrogance of these people. This is the whole "let them eat cake," the Marie Antoinette comment that was made during the French Revolution. That he thinks that the nurses are like peasants and we'll just give them chocolate and they'll be happy with that. I mean, I have come across this level of arrogance in the corporate world, and it just bowls you over when these people think they're on such a high level that they're dealing with peasants and they'll be happy with chocolate. I mean, What planet is this guy on? Seriously, what planet is this guy on?
I don't know. I mean, I can tell you that would not wash with me. A 6-pack of potato now, that'll be a different story. Anyway, what else is in the news? Christy Dignam. Christy Dignam's cancer battle. Christy Dignam is an Irish rock singer, lead frontman of the band Aslan. Again, this is something that my wife, who listens to some of the mainstream, and she heard Christy Dignam being interviewed during the week. I'm not sure what station it was on, but he did mention that when he was diagnosed with his cancer, I think she said there was 4 other gentlemen also diagnosed at the same time with the same kind of cancer. And in the interview, Christy noted that the other 4 gentlemen had subsequently died, but he was still alive. And he did say that the only difference treatment-wise was that he was taking CBD, cannabis oil. Now, I'm not 100% sure if he was taking the one with the THC or without the THC. But he did say it on national radio, and from what I understand, the person interviewing him had to kind of get rid of him at that stage because the last thing they want is for him to be promoting cannabis oil for the treatment of cancer. But again, it also says that his cancer battle is to be made into an RTE documentary. I would be very surprised the fact that he's now come out and said that he is using the CBD oil for the cancer, that RTE will have anything to do with it. And if they do, you know as well as I do, they will play down the CBD and just say that that's just a coincidence and it's not, there's no foundation behind it and it's an illegal drug and all this carry on. But I'm sure they will sing from the pulpit of the HSE and the pharmaceutical company, and they will plug the likes of chemotherapy and all the drugs. But they won't actually look at what Christy Dignam says himself is what's keeping him alive, the CBD. Any comments?
Not really.
No?
I mean, it's just getting to the stage, more and more people are coming out talking about CBD oil. We know the benefits of it, and it needs to be legalised. I mean, you can guarantee that if any of the politicians had a family member or a child that was suffering from some symptom, and they knew that CBD oil would help it, it'd be legalised straight away. That's the double standards you're dealing with in Ireland, and we know it's a benefit. We know it's a benefit. So many people have been using it, and we know it's a benefit. But look, we're in Ireland. We're a third world country, and we're being controlled by parasites. So,
Absolutely. And I've 2 more stories, but but they're both up there on the links. I did post them earlier, so I'm just going to go to touch on one of them because we are up against time, and that is migraine sufferer finds relief in cannabis-derived oil. The treatment has replaced the patient's painkillers, but remains unlicensed in Ireland. This was in the Irish Times. It was actually November the 30th, 2016, so it's actually an old story, one that kind of got past us here. But it says Colette Frawley, 61, who suffered from excruciating and debilitating migraine since childhood, recently discovered cannabinoid CBD oil, a derivative of cannabis. And it goes on to say that it changed her life. She said she'd been on every painkiller in the book since she was 10. A lot of them didn't work. Some kind of worked sometimes. But she said since someone that she knew who was diagnosed with cancer mentioned to her about the CBD oil, she has been bringing it into Ireland, and she said she's buying it from the Netherlands. It's reasonably priced, she says, at $27.95 for a 10ml bottle. She says she's had no problems with customs and excise, as a package which usually contains 5 bottles costs about €18 postage, and she said it arrives at her house in Dublin about 12 days after she orders. She says when she decided to go off the painkillers in order to give the CBD oil a fair chance. So she stopped taking them, and she said obviously she was in pain, but as soon as she started taking the oil, she had 3 drops 3 times a day, and she said within a couple of moments after taking the drops, it starts working straight away. Now she said it doesn't get rid of the headache completely, but she said it really does take the edge off it. So it goes from a migraine. Anyone who suffers with migraines knows what we're talking about. She says it goes from a migraine to just kind of a normal run-of-the-mill kind of light headache. But of course, as she says in the article, it is illegal here, so she won't be able to get it in Ireland. But the one that she gets, I believe, it doesn't have the THC. So it's just the CBD, which there is no problem getting in. So yeah, fair play to you, Colette, and yeah, keep doing what you're doing and keep spreading the news. And again, as I say, that was in the Irish Times, so the online edition anyway. So yeah, fair play to them for posting that article. Anyway, that's it. That's my week in the nutshell. How was your week?
Brilliant stuff. Okay, just before we bring Diarmaid on, just a couple of things. Now, this time of the year, you're going to have a lot of people, companies apparently, knocking on your door saying that you want to do your drives on your patio, and you want to, hose down your house and all this external work that needs to be done. And there's a lot of them that are scammers. And so just a couple of things that I'd like to point out. Now, I had to find a company that my mother-in-law wanted some external work done outside on a drive, and I'm aware of these, leaflets going in, and one of these leaflets came in her door, and I started investigating the leaflet, and I had a look at the website, I had a look at the web name, had a look at what they were saying, and basically it turned out that they were a scammer. They were scammers chancing their arm. So basically what I did is, you need to be trying to get yourself a professional company as much as you can. So what I did was I contacted the Guild of Craftsmen, and I asked them who they would recommend as members of their guild. And I got a great company called Citywide Paving, who came up from Dublin, and I have to say they started the work on the Monday and they finished on the Saturday, and the work is fantastic. They did a brilliant job, very professional, very organised, very well done, and there's no complaints at all. And again, I got the contact from the guild, so I just want to give you a few pointers to watch out for with these leaflets coming in. Number one, if they're dropping leaflets into your house, they're obviously not that good, because Citywide Paving don't drop in leaflets because they're that good, they're that busy, that they don't need to be doing leaflets, because, they're very good at what they do. The workmanship is superb. But here's a few tips. Anyway, now, the one thing I noticed on the leaflet was it was a .com website rather than a .ie website. Now, .ie for international listeners is for Ireland. Now, to get a .ie domain name, you have to be a registered business or sole trader. So the company, the scammers were using a .com domain name, which means that anybody could buy them. All right, so that means they weren't a registered business. So no matter what they say, they're not. Okay, so the .com, you have to watch out for that. Okay, now look at the location where they're based as well. Sometimes they might be based in a location, might be a giveaway. It wasn't this case for me, it was a bit of a giveaway on the leaflet. Now, they'll also, on their flyer, they also said that they were members of the guild. And so maybe they don't expect people to ring up and check, but I did. I rang up the guild and spoke to a lady called Sheila. And Sheila said to me, she checked the database, she said, no, they're not members, and that they will be now contacted by the guild and told to remove their logo from their leaflets, or they'll be obviously brought to court. So watch out for that. So if they say they're a member of the guild or whatever, check all the references or check the guild, ring them up and find out yourself. Best of all, at the end of the day, just ring up the guild and get a good company, get a good contact. Now, they've also used the same internet, talk about giveaway. They use the same images on their flyer as they do on their website. And there's typos on the website. The website that you have is kind of a Mickey Mouse makey-uppy website with typos on it. That's another giveaway. And as I say, most importantly, if they're good at what they do, they'll be busy. They won't need to post flyers in. All right. I've seen Citywide Paving did an excellent job, and I've seen the amount of work they had to do just to prepare a drive and get it ready. And there's a lot involved. And the work they've done is superb. It's brilliant. So I can't recommend them enough. As I say, they did a great job. So just be on your guard. If anybody comes to your house with leaflets or business cards promoting the service, don't go with them. Honest, don't go with them. Find a company, ask a friend or neighbour or whatever who's reputable or they've used and there's references. Cold calling to do work, don't trust them. All right. And the other thing that's on the list is the one thing I've noticed over the last few weeks is that more and more people are beginning to people that we know are leaving groups, are splitting up from groups. I don't know whether it's a number of reasons. Could be ego, could be ignorance, could be they've fallen out over something, or maybe they're just tired and they've had enough and they just want to go back and get back into their own life. And they've put a lot of energy into what they're doing. And it seems to be happening. It seems to be, doing what you do in the alternative media takes a lot of energy. And we'll be talking to Diarmaid about that at the moment, when we bring Diarmaid in. Because it does take a lot of energy. It does take a lot of time. And, it's hard to switch off if you're doing it 24/7, because a lot of the time it is 24/7. So I don't know what's going on. I don't know whether it's because people, there's the struggle and, financial reasons and all that, and people are just kind of pulling back and saying, right, I'm going to focus on my life and I've done enough, or people splitting up. But it's sad to see, because we need more and more people to be coming together and work together. But I don't really know. Have you noticed that at all, Steve?
Not really, no.
No, you haven't seen it. Okay.
No, I have. I'm not going to just be flippant, but I know you do what you do, and you put your heart and soul into it, and you do a lot of research, and you do spend a lot of time, as I said before, sorting the wheat from the chaff, where you filter out what needs to be filtered out before you send it on to me, because you know that I'm working full time, doing other things, but this is technically your full time gig, so to speak. Look, at the end of the day, we have seen it happen before, where people have started. I mean, look at the Sovereign Independent, way ahead of its time, really ahead of its time. Yeah. A group of guys who got together, invested their own money, and got a newspaper up and running. I think they gave it away free, and then they eventually sold it for €1. Yeah. But the people weren't awake enough. Yeah. They just weren't awake, so the whole thing folded. The lads they're still knocking about, and they're not gone off the face of the earth. They're still knocking about. And hopefully it will, the phoenix will rise once again at a later date, when people. I mean, if the Sovereign Independent had come out around the time of the water protests, fantastic. It would have. I think it would have really taken off. It would have given the broadsheets a run for their money. They were. The trouble is that there was marriages on the line, because it was taking up so much time. Yeah. And when you have a family and kids and all that, really. But as Steve said, the phoenix might rise again. But talking about that, Diarmaid is also going to be working on a kind of newspaper, if not a leaflet, and giving out to people. But what we'll do is find out from Diarmaid. He'll be able to tell us all that. Good evening, Diarmaid. How are you?
Good evening, Alan. I'm great, thank you.
Listen, thanks a lot for coming on. Before we get in and talk about what's been going on in your life and what you're up to, Steve's going to do a quick bio on your background. Steve.
I hope I do it justice, I really do. It says here, Diarmaid is of CIT in Business Studies and Marketing, and later of UCC in Computer Science and Irish. A successful business systems consultant for almost 30 years in IT and finance management. The Secretary and PRO of the People's Convention, that's the CPPC, founded in December 2010. Diarmaid is a writer and a contributor in the ongoing debate for the democratic renewal and the need for empowerment of the people. He's also a campaigner against the household charge and LPT local property tax. He's a hands-on organiser in a leading role across a range of issues, including tenancy, housing, homelessness, Irish Water, the anti-democratic political party whip system, and the campaign for IREXIT. Diarmaid has challenged the standards in the public office, the SIPO, the law being, he was imprisoned in May 2016 for non-acceptance of regulations which favour the political party system or the right of citizens. He's also a pioneer in the water meter scalping campaign, and Diarmaid is also a survivor of lung cancer who's very lucky to be alive.
Wow, where do we start, Diarmaid? That's
there you go, yeah. Life is interesting, isn't it?
I'll tell you, you have a list there. I don't know whether you have any time for yourself, based on the list that we read out there. I suppose, what woke you up to what's going on and what got you started? Let's start off there.
Well, I suppose political consciousness from me, if I went way back, I remember being a child, listening to the reports of shootings up in the north and so on, and wondering what on earth is happening in our country. But really, things sharpened up for me when I was a student, in the kind of 19, 20, 21, 22 age bracket. and back in the late 70s, early 80s, and highlighted during the hunger strikes, which I know mobilised a lot of people and caused a lot of people to think. I know there was a group of us in what was called RTC Cork at the time, organising meetings for families to come down and explain what was happening to prisoners in the north. One morning to be greeted by special branch at the front gate, barring us from entry to college and so on. And I mean, kind of life throws up things from time to time which cause you to think. And I was active at that time politically, and I suppose, you know, finishing college and so on, you're into a different arena and you need to find your feet in how to operate in a different environment. And to be honest, for maybe 20 years, I got swept away with just work and without time. And what made me pause again was actually I suffered serious illness with cancer and so on, and I spent the best part of a year lying on my back thinking, saying, is this all that life has?
Okay.
So I resolved that whatever talents I have, and everybody has talents, they're all different, that I would use them to my best ability in the cause of the people, because nothing else is worthwhile. So 24 hours isn't enough. I could easily fill 48 hours. There are so many things to be done, and you know, you need the energy. But I suppose in that atmosphere, when there is so much to do, it's very important that you do what they call boxing clever. You have to be very thoughtful about what you put your energy into, because you simply can't do everything. And you need to, I myself and a narrow enough group of close friends, if you like, have been trying to do that. We've been trying to think, well, what are the right things to be doing in this era of modern Ireland and in the world situation that we're in, which is post-Cold War and all this kind of stuff. We're living in a very, very dangerous world, and we have to think, how are we going to make effective change? And I know for me, one of the things you don't do is you don't simply repeat what others discovered in a different time. You know, like the Irish history, for example, is full of great revolutionary figures and great thinkers and social activists. But we don't make progress today by simply repeating the ideas or even the deeds of gone by. We have to address the issue today in the conditions that exist today, make our own analysis and take that responsibility to drive on change today. So that's, you know, I forget your question now, but where did it begin? But it began, I suppose, by being prompted by life's events, be it way back 40 years ago with those events in the north of Ireland, or be it more recently through the hunger strike period and all the struggles that have gone on since then. And there are many, including ongoing battles. Today, as you know, there are so many families in this country in severe, serious crisis. People who day to day are facing anxiety and wondering if the act's going to fall today. And there is no need for any of it. There is no need for it at all. In this country we live in Ireland, is blessed with resources. We couldn't have more. If we tried to choose a country in the world or a place to live with resources, you'd do very well to find a place with more resources and more opportunity than Ireland. Yet the people don't control, and this is a scandalous thing. The people have no say in how our country is run.
Well, I think you're definitely on the money there, Diarmaid. I mean, as regards resources, we know we have plenty of resources because we're giving it away. We know we could definitely, we won't go hungry. We have the means there to feed ourselves without importing anything from anywhere. Now, I suppose if it was the likes of electronics, well, we probably need China and the likes for that. But I mean, no, there's no reason why anyone should go hungry in this country. But just thinking back there, can you remember, like, okay, you sound like you've been kind of awake or awakened for a long time, but at what point can you remember, did you kind of say to yourself, I'm sick of what's going on, I can see the way things are going, I am going to try and make a difference? Can you remember, like, what was your tipping point? When did you kind of start to get active?
If you like, you know, life is phases. In my most recent phase, it goes back to when I was, like, the doctors told me I wasn't going to survive, really, and I had to make a will and so on. And I was annoyed with myself, saying, what the hell has brought me here, right? And if this is going to be the end of me, so I was determined it's not going to be the end of me. And I suppose just, because you can get run along with the mill of life and all the necessities of day-to-day work and, achievements here and disappointments there and family growing up. And life is a day-to-day struggle for people, and you can be swept along, and I'm sure people will be very kind of familiar with the idea, that decades and multiple decades pass at the blink of an eye. And but at some point you have to, if you can, pause and say, well, what's it for? And for me, I'm convinced it was being seriously ill, and said, no, I'm going to do something about this and going to discover how to move forward. And so what I did very promptly is I re-established communication with people I had been in the student movement with in the National Union of Students of Ireland back in the early 80s and late 70s and so on. Re-established links with some old friends, and we put together some ideas and that we think would open the path today. And our conclusion was to try and look at, well, what are people's rights? And we have to conclude that everybody has the same right in life. We're all humans, and as I think the US Constitution says, we're all created equally. And anyway, but this is the human thing. We are all equal and equal stakeholders in the future of our country, and nobody has the right to dictate to us. No interest group, no vested interest, and equally no political party. Like, if we're citizens of the state here, it means we own it. It's ours, right? And this should be the instrument through which we exercise our rights and through which we satisfy our every need. So it's kind of a realization that we have the rights. So now, given that we have the rights, well, how do we exercise those rights? How can we exercise our democratic control over our own lives? And those are questions that you turn your mind to and think. And it's a simple area because, in one respect, because in any state, and there are states, it'd be better if we had one humanity, but as of now, the world is organized on the basis of states. And in any state, you can ask the question, do the people rule or do we not? And it is a kind of a binary question, black and white. Do the people rule or don't we? And today in Ireland, we most certainly do not rule. So then you have to ask, well, who does rule?
Well,
and you
Diarmaid, it's mob rule. I mean, let's get down to the core of it. I mean, at the end of the day, we talk about democracy, and people say, oh, we have democracy. But if you actually look at what democracy is, it's mob rule. And, at the end of the day, if you don't pay your bills, they'll send out around the bailiffs or wherever they do, and it's just, or you get pulled up by the police, and if you don't do what you're told, you get pulled out of the car. It's mob rule. That's what it is. It's just mob rule. Wherever way you look at it, from my point of view anyway, it's mob rule. The use of the threat or use of violence to get you to do something that is going against your rights, and that's what the government do, and people don't see it.
That's exactly what they do, except I would differ with you. I wouldn't call it mob rule because mob somehow implies a large crowd, and the people who rule are maybe the 1%. They're a tiny segment of the society that rule, and they do rule by force. But the idea of democracy, just because these people masquerade and call themselves Democrats, doesn't mean that we take them in their word. I don't believe that they are democratic. Or the country of Ireland, while we are entitled to democracy, but it's been hijacked. We don't live in a system that's organised in which we exercise democratic control. So our democracy has been taken from us. But to me, democracy is, and again, that debate gets confused, I believe, with intellectuals and academics and so on, inputting. They go back to Plato and what have you. Again, the issue of democracy to me boils down, do the people rule or don't we? And how we rule then is another matter. The form of that democracy is a separate question than its content. Do the people rule? And if so, what methods will be employed to exercise that rule? And we don't have that, and the task today is for democratic-minded people to identify how we do that and move forward on that basis.
Yeah, see, well, when I say mob rule, we know about the 1% and the golden circle, but they control the mobs, which I would, I'm referring to is the element of the control, which is the mafia or the gangsters will have their element of the thugs who they send out, the contract killers and all that. Or the people who enforce the protection rackets basically that's what the 1% are doing. They're not doing it themselves. That's white collar. You know, they will send out their the minions who they pay to go out and do the job for them. And this is why you have, I mean, if you look at the likes of what happened in Corofin, I mean, that's a typical example where they had no paperwork whatsoever, but yet they turned up the bailiffs and even the Gardaí that were there, what he was doing, he shouldn't have done what he did. Yeah. And so our society is kind of breaking down when things like that, when you know, I'm a big believer of being a corporate person that, you know, and a manager is you manage by example, you know, and if I've staff and I'm managing them, the staff have to see me working twice as hard. If I put my feet up on the desk and then start dictating to them what to do, they're not going to respect me, and if anything, they'll probably resent me. So, and this is the thing, and what's happening with the government is you have your level of arrogance, and these politicians coming in, and they're on a big salary, and they're dictating to everybody, you do this, you do that, and they're doing their own thing. I mean, it's quite obvious. I always relate politics to the corporate world, because it is the same thing.
One is the same thing, yeah. One is the same thing. They rule, and this is what, like, we're well into launching a campaign now against or looking for a referendum on the European Union. And that's what it is. It's corporate rule. And these are all monopolized corporations. And they're even transnational. They don't even respect national boundaries anymore, because between their finance capital, if you like, and just giant corporations, they dictate everything. We are ruled by what they call these markets. And that is how we're ruled. In other words, we're ruled by a system of anarchy and greed and corruption and actual violence, because on a world scale they're conducting wars on a massive level. You see, with Trump's visit there to Saudi Arabia, he has signed a deal for something in the region of $360 billion of armaments. I mean, what on earth? Like, here he is paying back the arms industry, that lobby in the United States, and supplying weapons to Saudi Arabia, who's raining hell on top of Yemen and all of its neighbours, even arming this ISIS and so on. So this is what the giant corporations are all backing. They're not interested in people's rights. They're not interested in democracy or humanity. Just profit. We're only sources of profit for them. That's all.
Well, things are going to change, and are not change in a good way from what we've been told. And I won't say where it came from, the information, but what we've been told is that as it stands at the moment, Trump, we've been told this, whether it happens or not, we'll have to see. But as we've been told, Trump is going to be ousted and Hillary is going to be put in. And then Hillary's going to kick off with Russia, and then the crap's going to hit the fan big time. Yeah. Now, that's what we've been told as it stands. If that might change and get stopped, but it's a possibility. And so everybody's going to be affected globally. If they oust Trump and they put Hillary in, then we might as well say goodbye, because she's just a complete psychopath, and we all know that.
You see, that you know, they call it this great bastion of democracy in the United States. They're protecting us all, they have us believe. But this is a complete monster. This choice that the American people had between Trump and Hillary, absolute two monsters. Yeah. And it is no choice, no more than, you know, than the Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael charade we've had here for decades. These aren't choices. And even the electoral system, like you read out of my small bio there to start, I had the pleasure of spending a night in jail last year because I challenged the electoral law in Ireland, which directly finances the political parties. And if you remember voting in the state here, when you go to election, you see the candidates, their pictures on a ballot paper, and you see the logos beside the party candidates. But an independent candidate, for example, can't put a logo on the page. Even though our state money goes into financing all those parties, nothing goes to the independent candidate. Nothing. So, like, there's a whole lot of tweaks in the electoral system which deprive the citizens of an equal right to elect or to be elected. It's all biased. So the system in America is a joke. It's equally a joke in our state, because it's designed to ensure continuity of what is there. Yeah. That's what it's for.
And they're all, and again, it's all the 1% and the family members, and it's all the nepotism that goes on. within the actual politicians, you know, hiring the relatives and the cousins and everything else. So the dynasty continues and carries on. Now, one of the things you have, you said too, that we could mention is, what about socialism and ideology?
Oh yeah. For a period of my life, I waved the red flag as a student, which I'm proud of and so on. And I suppose the idea of socialism is of great attraction to young people in particular, who are looking for solutions in life and see a kind of fairness and so on in the idea of socialism. However, I think, you know, most organizations today who proclaim socialism, if you look at what they're actually saying, is they're echoing the work of Lenin, if you like, of that era, this being the centenary of the Bolshevik Revolution. But they're echoing that, but they're forgetting that 100 years of history has passed and the actual makeup of the world has changed. And one of the things that, in my understanding of Marxist theory, is one of the one constant actually in history is change. And you can't expect a theory valid 100 years ago or 150 years ago to be the same, because the theory is just the accumulated experience that has gone on. And there's been a lot of experience since then, including the early experience of building socialism in the Soviet Union and their fight against Nazi Germany and so on, and its ultimate defeat and so on. So I think one of the lessons from me is that people need to stop quoting from books and need to start looking at things themselves, like your radio, open your mind. People need to open their minds and not have a dogma. You know, you see some religious types go around with their books and they quote a scripture, or people for a time went around quoting Mao's Little Red Book and so on. We need to stop doing that. Think for ourselves, right? So, to me, I still, you know, the greatest socialist in Irish history was James Connolly. I would regard him as a great national hero, and his work, brilliant. Even the work of Marx and Lenin, brilliant. But we must think for ourselves today, and to put forward a platform today in Ireland, or anywhere, to say we must take up socialism, is in fact to pre-decide policy for the people, which itself is therefore not democratic.
Well, the one question I have, now I'm not an expert in socialism, and I'll put my hand up to that. But I have, what I've heard about socialism, as you said, it's 100 years old or however long, we have to move forward. But is there any country in the world at the moment that is a socialist country and where it works? Because people who are talking to me about this said to me, socialism doesn't work and there's no country in the world, it's never worked. And there's no country in the world that is actually a socialist because it doesn't work.
Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing is that people need to realise that history is an evolving process. And that's one of the things that Marx discovered. He revealed it. He didn't create it. He discovered it and revealed the law. Like, just as natural history has laws governing its development, which were proven through fossils and animal evolution and so on, so too does human society evolve and change all the time. And so there was a period in history whereby if you said, let's have capitalist production, someone would say to you, show me a country in the world where that's ever worked. Yeah. And you wouldn't have been able to, because it didn't exist. It was a new thing in its time, replacing the old feudal order and so on. So equally today, put a demand saying, show me where socialism has worked. Well, it did work in the early decades of the Soviet Union and has worked to differing degrees. But to kind of reduce the debate to that, you would nearly then have to go and say, well, define for me what socialism is. And once you say that, you're going to have an argument with 10 different people. So all of a sudden, this revolutionary ideology of socialism becomes a factor for dividing people rather than its proper role, which would be to unite people. Like, famously, on Karl Marx's tomb over in Highgate Cemetery in London, inscribed on his tomb is, the philosophers have interpreted the world in various ways. The point, however, is to change it. So my answer to people who proclaim socialism or who try to deny it or anything else is, don't worry about it. Why don't you go and analyse the conditions today in our country and worldwide, and let's come up with solutions. And but I would also say, you can't actually do that until you engage. You can't understand or develop these social theories or solutions without tackling the problems. It's impossible. You might say, to be a physicist without conducting experiments, you have to engage.
Yeah.
So, that's the key point. So there are states of differing degrees of empowerment for people. Like, I would be an admirer of Castro's Cuba. They have maintained their independence and their self-development and self-determination despite the onslaught of the world against them. Others have, to differing degrees over time, but they're against an almighty, lineup of world superpowers in Russia, China, United States, Britain, France, the European Union now aspiring to be a world power, hoping also to develop their military angle, because no use being a big dog if you can't bite. They need teeth. So the current debate in Europe is to build a defence force and have common defence budget. They've agreed that, I think, this week. So, the people who say, well, where is socialism? Well, don't worry about it. Just take up the struggle in Ireland and wherever you are. If you're in Wales and Scotland and Germany, take up the struggle in your own place to fight these issues and develop the ideas, but be conscious of the democratic necessity that it's for people's empowerment. You can't impose a preordained ideology on anybody. It's for the people to decide. And if people decide they want to socialise property and socialise the means of production, then so be it. If people decide they don't want that, then fine as well.
I think the trouble over here in Ireland, I don't have a problem with capitalism in its true form. But the problem over here with the banking system and the way things are is that for 99% of the population, it's capitalism, and for the 1%, it's socialism, especially where the banks are involved. Because there's people who have lost their businesses and they go, oh, well, that's tough. But hang on, you're a bank, you're a private business. You should go bang if you're trading insolvent. And they go, oh, no. And they got bailed out by the people. This is the inconsistency of what's going on in Ireland and the double standards. And this is why...
They're forever praising to us the free market, and you must let it take its course. The thing is, there is no free market. No, only maybe at the very periphery, where you have a small shop owner who's barely surviving. There is no free market, and there hasn't been for a couple of 100 years. They're monopoly controlled by giant corporates and by finance capital. So there is no freedom. These markets they talk about in Europe and so on, they're all controlled and manipulated. We've seen the evidence time after time. So, and again, the guy says, start your own business, and if you fail, pity about it. But when the big guys fail, they impoverish the entire country. In fact, Europe now is being ripped off. The people in Greece are up in arms again because there's a further attempt to increase austerity on them. This is a barbaric system of so-called free markets, nothing about which is free. This is the illusion. It's a dictatorship. It's not free at all.
Yeah, exactly. And we have this illusion. And we kind of say, it's like being a sheep in a field. You have this illusion of freedom because you can walk around the field. But when you get to the edge, you can't go any further. And that's your prison. It's an open-air prison. We say, one of the things that we say, myself and Steve have talked about, we have done a video on YouTube, and we call it the fluid belief system. And the fluid belief system is about challenging what you believe. Rather than being closed-minded and being stuck in a certain belief system, challenge what you believe, because by challenging what you believe, it's healthy and you'll keep learning and growing. If you get stuck in a belief system and because there are people who are big into socialism, and that's fine, that's what they're into. But if you were to turn around and prove to them, say, well, this is why it's not going to work, they wouldn't even entertain that. They're so gung-ho, close-minded, that's it, I'm a socialist, that's it, end of story. Yeah. They're not even prepared to and when people are like that and close-minded and they won't challenge their belief system, then they won't grow. And that's the problem. And this is why we have the problem here that are just Fianna Fáilers, Fine Gaelers, Labour. They're into the parties. They think they know about politics. They know nothing, because if they did know about politics, they'd know they were being screwed. Unless, of course, they're involved with the 1% and they're having a great life and they don't want things to change. That's it.
And unfortunately, there is a segment of our population who have thrown their lot in by being second tuned to this 1%. And they're the ones who go out regularly and vigorously voting for the likes of these, traditional parties and so on. Like, there are people who have something, little enough, but they're holding tightly to what they have out of fear of losing it. And this is a problem. But, going back to what starts one down a road of being conscious, real life is going to dictate to those people in time. The reason being is because the powers that be in Ireland or throughout the world, they do not have a solution to this crisis. So you see in Europe, they're still printing, is it 60 to 80 billion euros a month in their quantitative easing, and there has now for, I'd say nearly a year and a half, maybe 2 years they're going on it, constantly printing currency to try to spike the economy to grow and so on, and it's not working. So reality will come home when someone cops on again, which is going to happen, that the king is actually naked, he doesn't have his best suit on, and then the confidence will drop. I mean, like in the same way you see the property market in Ireland now again rising. Price of property now is above what its real value is, and it is going to crash again. There's no doubt about it. It's like the earthquake in San Francisco. It will happen again. It's only a question of when. So people will eventually be forced to realise that there is no solution and that they themselves have to take responsibility. Now, here's the problem. Unless the people at that particular point are already organised or have the basis of being organised amongst them, then they're going to be diverted again, as what continuously happens. Like, I think you guys are on the road, is it about 7 years now?
Nearly 7 years now,
so
yeah.
You're kind of almost contemporaneous with this recent period of crisis. And if you remember, I'm sure you do well, that famous Fianna Fáil government in the end of 2010 and start of 2011, as they were collapsing. I mean, it was a joke. Minister after minister didn't know what was going on, and scandal upon scandal. At that point, had the people of Ireland been organised separately, they could have taken command in the country. But no, the trade unions marched us up and down through the snow and the hail and so on, and to go nowhere in a hurry. So, like, one of the things politically that I'm trying to do with this People's Convention movement and so on that we started is we're trying to do two things. We're trying to develop ideas about empowerment and how the people can exercise their own democratic control over their lives and over their state and so on. And the second thing is we're trying to actually build the networking between people so as that we have an organisation through which we can act when flashpoints arrive, as, for example, happened there recently in this water charges campaign and so on. So I know, like, we're stronger here in the south in Cork, and we were pretty much leading the whole fight against Irish water in terms of organising marches and so on in the city, because we have a network established. So the people need two things. We need to have the ideas which actually hold the grain of real social change, not just peddling some ideology. And the second thing is we have to actually be organised so that we can act in a unified way, because the powers that be, the 1%, are very highly organised. And as you said earlier, they will enforce and do enforce their will on the people, right down to dragging you to jail, or if needs be, cracking your head with a baton. And so there's a very, it's a difficult and big job ahead of people, because even amongst the ranks of organising people who are of a progressive, vein that they want to do things, the question of ideology and ideas is a big thing which disorganises them. And it's to try and break through that to say, what is the basis for having a movement of the people which isn't bound to any vested interest? And the only principle for that is the recognition that we are all equal stakeholders in the future of our country, therefore we all are entitled to an equal and the same say. And that being the basis of coming together means we all have unique individual ideas, which makes us human. Some of us like different variations of what they call socialism. Some people like to think they're anarchist. Some people think they're laissez-faire, capitalist ideologues and so on. That's fine. People are entitled to be what they're to be, but we should unite on the thing which unites us, which is our common interest to decide the policy of our own state.
Well, here's the problem, Diarmaid. Let's go back to the psychology of the person, as opposed to the ideology on what they believe in. We've talked about this on the show time and time again, and the problem is that people need to, we've just said it earlier about people taking responsibility for themselves, but that's the adult mind. The teenage mind is the ego and the ignorance, right? And unfortunately, the majority of people are in a teenage mind, which is the nanny state. You know, the nanny state is going to take care of me and is going to cuddle me, and anything I need, I'll go to the nanny state. Because that's easier and it takes less energy than taking responsibility for yourself and having the adult mind. The teenage mind, as I say, is ego and ignorance. The adult mind is humility and wisdom. And that's why common law, when we common law and Breheren law, people took responsibility for themselves. We don't need legislation. We don't need, you know, all these kind of rules, you know, road rules, or any legislation at all got to do with the road acts or any of these acts. We don't need any of them. The only reason why they're there is because there are people who don't take responsibility for themselves. So the nanny state was created to do that for them. When you as an adult, and this is the kind of I use this as the analogy to kind of explain it, right? You know, if you are going to go out drinking, right, you either, and you drive your car there, you'll say, well, okay, I'll leave my car there and I'll get a taxi back, I'll pick it up in the morning, or I'll get a lift there, and that's the adult thing to do. The teenage mind will drive there and go, sure, I drive better with 5 points on me, and I get in the car and put your own life at risk or put somebody else at risk. That's the teenage mind. And the problem is there's a lot of people in the teenage mind. And that's why we need to get to the adult mind. But it's going to take probably another 200 or 300 years maybe until people wake up to it. And that's why people fall out. I said it earlier in the show. There's people that I've come across this week on Facebook that have either left certain groups who are really doing well, or they've decided to come out of the group because, you know, they've done enough and they're walking away from it. Yeah. And unfortunately, when there's a kind of a breakup or disagreement, a lot of the time it's got to do with egos or ignorance. You know, a lot of the time, you know. Yeah. And that's why we have to, so the ego, I know it's part of us, but we have to be controlled that and not let the ego control us. So all these little things as people, as our personality and the psychology, we have to deal with it before we even get into the ideology of what they believe in and what they're dealing with. Again, a common ground. That's why I think if you're in a group and you're going to get a group together, a little kind of constitution should be put together to everybody agrees that this is what we're focusing on, this is what we're going to do, and we leave all our personal preferences aside and focus on this. And then you might have a chance of getting something together.
Yeah, I think you're explaining it right. I think so. Like from the very cradle, I mean, most experiences of people in Ireland is they're born with what is terribly called original sin. So people are already sinners before they start out in life, you know. And when you start there, you're on bad territory. But right from the cradle up, we're conditioned to think in certain ways and within certain parameters, like inside that field where there's a fence and so on. And it's difficult to get out of that, and more difficult given the conditions and the necessity and struggle of life that you have to provide and get on and so on. So it is difficult to do that. But people will see, and I don't think we need 300 years, to be honest with you, because I don't think change happens like that. It's not like turning on a tap to fill a bath of water. It will take a defined amount of time. You'll find at certain points history accelerates and jumps when certain conditions come around. And like you saw that, for example, if you were in Ireland in 1912 in a debate, or you know, even in 1913 after the lockout, and said there's going to be almighty war in this country for a period of 10 years, if you said that, you'd have been laughed at. But political conditions can change and all of a sudden pull to one side a veil which hangs over people's eyes and expose the nature of what they're dealing with. And that has happened a few times even since in Irish history. If you remember in the period, I don't know if you remember when Bloody Sunday in Dublin happened, or Bloody Sunday North happened, and the protests in Dublin which burnt down the British Embassy and so on. Like, here was a mood all over the country, or even during the periods of the hunger strike. Like, you could have put a match to this country and it would have been an open rebellion. You know, if particular courses were taken. Like, people, often the Irish people are described as being passive and too quiet and look, for example, there's riots on in Greece for the last few days. Why aren't we doing that, you know? Maybe it's because we're more mature, because we've been there and we know the consequence of our actions. But I believe that there's a very thin veil over Ireland between, you know, people complaining and outright rebellion. And the thing is, we have to prepare the conditions. People, like the majority are indeed tied up with the day-to-day humdrum of life. But those who step forward need to become conscious of this and, you know, view the society so as to prepare the conditions when, you know, when they're needed, that the ideas exist without the distraction of vested interests, and that an organisation amongst the people exists which can carry home what the objective of the people is. So this is the debate which I'm trying to encourage with people around the country and everywhere that needs to be happen. It needs to go on, and because we do need to break away from the control of a system which is actually just destroying the Irish people. Like, you know, a unique thing that Irish people have in our history is that there's no other nation on earth with the same history of immigration as we have in Ireland. None. And you have to say, well, what on earth is wrong with the Irish people? That we have this, they used to tell us in school that this is a wanderlust of the Gael, you know.
Yeah.
But it's rubbish, but it's the truth that there's no other people for hundreds of years who have had consistent immigration like we have. We have suffered several instances of outright Holocaust against the people, going back since Cromwell's time even, right up until the 1840s. That absolute Holocaust. You know, 1847, that we're in now the 170th anniversary of, they called it Black 47, you know, because it was the worst year of what they call it, the famine.
Well, yeah,
you know,
it's 1845 to 1848, wasn't it?
Yeah, but 1847 was a record year for production of food in Ireland. Never in the history of our country did we produce so much food. And in the same year, more people than ever starved.
Yeah, but that's because the food was taken off us.
Yeah. Half the divisions of the British Army were here escorting food out of the country.
Yeah, exactly. So it wasn't I mean, this whole, we don't want to go down this road, but I mean, it wasn't a famine, it was a bloody Holocaust because of the food.
It was a Holocaust.
And I just think that, you know, we've had, you know, over 800 years of repression, as we know, and I'm not getting down, you know, I don't want to get into the, kind of the British control because, but I think people are beaten down to a certain extent. Maybe it's historical, but on a day-to-day basis, it's kind of I'm okay Jack as well. There are people out there, because I've spoken to people and I've said, you know, this is going on, that's going on, evictions, you know, hint, would you like to get involved in a group and let's do something about it? And they're just not interested because as you know, as long as they're okay and they can put the food on the table, then kind of sod everybody else. And that's what it is. And you think, well, where's your kind of empathy for other people? You know, surely if you can help them in some way, you'd want to do that. But they're not bothered. Yeah.
That can be very frustrating. But I think what you have to do is realise that people are caught up in life and they don't see the way out of it. Just because you or I stand up and say, we need to go this path, like, why on earth should they listen to you or me? You know what I mean? Like, you have to earn the right, and also circumstances need to come around. So there should be sufficient good people to actually carry on a program. Like, you've kept your radio station going. We've kept our publishing systems going here in Cork, and our agitation. Every week we have an information stall in the city centre in Cork. I think we're in the 6th year of it now. Every single Saturday we're out there. And we keep this going all the time, so there's a consistency there. And the result of it is that we know an awful lot of people in our area, and they know us. And they're beginning to look at the politics of what we're doing. So I'm thinking that down the line, when these people perceive crisis, they'll say, what about these people? What are they saying? So all of a sudden there will be a basis there for actually making a real movement of people which isn't controlled by some political party interest or some banking corporation or some bought-out trade union who've betrayed the people decades ago and so on. So, but it can be a struggle to understand, well, I can see this, why can't everybody else see it?
Yeah.
And the thing is, maybe they do see it, but the way forward is what they're missing. They can't see how they'll bring it home. Like, I know the experience in the water charge campaign, at the beginning they were all telling us, look, pay your bill, you're right, but you're going to have to pay it anyhow in the end, so just pay it and be done. And it transformed from that to being the absolute majority were determined, hell or high water, this privatisation of water is going to stop. And it was a victory for the people, and they saw what their own power can do.
I wouldn't speak too soon, because we've got inside information from Irish Water that they're going to start putting the meters in again in June.
It wouldn't surprise me one bit. It wouldn't surprise me one bit.
Because
it's too valuable a resource to give up.
Yeah, exactly, and they want to privatise it, Steve.
I just heard recently, actually, Diarmaid, and Alan, I don't know if you heard this, but I heard during the week that the whole water thing in the UK is in such a disarray at the moment that they're actually considering whether it will happen or not, but they're thinking of reverting it back into the hands of the public, because
that's happened in different places. Yeah, the rail as well, I think, in the UK is looking funny as well.
Do you want do you've got questions for Diarmaid there?
I do have a couple of questions.
Okay, sure, fire away.
Where we go. Joan said earlier, we don't have any right to decide what's best for Ireland. It's done on our behalf. And she goes on to talk about the solar farms, the tree planting by Microsoft. And she's wondering, any thoughts, Diarmaid? This is not the end. She once wrote, if we are not careful, we will become the Gaza of Europe.
I'm not sure how we can become the Gaza of Europe. But I think, I don't know what Joan means, but, you know, Europe sees us as a resource, as a raw material source. You can see how they're taking 95% of our fish stock is taken. They want to build these wind farms and bring power across the UK. They want our beef. They want us to grow crops and so on. They're not interested in the people of Ireland. I know Gaza is harvested by Israel of its water and its resource as well. So if that's the point, then yeah, that's what we are. The European powers are not interested in the full development of industry or agriculture or culture in Ireland. They're just not interested. They're interested in exploiting our resource, and that is all.
Oh, that's so true. That's all they seem to want to do. And just actually earlier on, one of the lads on People's Internet Radio, just before we continue, we talked about the socialism. He said it's called fascism, plain and simple, using force to keep itself in power. What do you think of that, Diarmaid?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't call socialism fascism, but again, what is socialism is a bigger debate. But what we have today in Europe is fascism. And like they disguise themselves because they point to the National Front or they point to the extremes of Le Pen and so on, and they call that some kind of a crude fascism. But the fascism that exists in the corporate world, I mean, that's what this Mussolini, praised this corporate fact. The corporate state is the fascist state. And like all these people who backed Hitler, for example, and the Nazis in World War II, and who financed them, they are still the industrial powers. And their objective is still the same. And like I know in Cork, disgracefully, in the last month, we had all the poles all around Cork City, big, huge, free banners praising the centenary of Ford in Cork, the Ford factory. But as you may know, Henry Ford was a Nazi. He was given the first big international medal award by Hitler, and a great friend of Hitler's. He published his anti-Semite newspaper in America through his car network and so on. So all these financiers are still there and still rule the roost. And what do you call it when these big powers do what they have done to the likes of Ireland or what they're doing in Greece and so on? It is fascism, and it will become the more naked, crude form of fascism only when it needs to, when it is resisted. Then you'll see the jackboot coming out as well. But in the meantime, they don't need to do that because they have, servile governments like our own who will implement their policy for them.
Ain't that the truth? Just now, some people were saying as well, the fact that it's an ism, we should stay away from isms. I'm not too well up on my isms. But I suppose, look, no matter what it is, there's going to be problems with every system, I suppose. And again, if we have someone else dictating to us what we're going to get, well, I think that really is where the problem lies. If enough people, as you said earlier, Diarmaid, if enough people in Ireland actually got together and put their heads together, we are kind of, as has been alluded to, a nation of saints and scholars. You know, if we put our bloody heads together, then surely we could come up with a system that works for us. We don't have to have a name. It doesn't have to be an ism or anything else. It can just be, it can be anything.
There is a need for social science. There is a need for people to study, what might be socialism or study Marxism and all that. But let's not confuse academia with life. Like, let the academics go and study. But in the first instance, like, people need to deal with real life today as we face it. And don't substitute some ism, which would be a pre-decided set of ideas for us tackling and making our own analysis today and taking responsibility ourselves. There's no point quoting some experts. Let's quote ourselves and take that responsibility.
Totally agree. We have to it goes back to us taking the responsibility for ourselves and our actions, which is, again, common law, Brahman law, and we don't need legislation. That's it. Just be responsible for yourself. No harm, loss or injury for people, and just be responsible for your own actions. I mean, that's all it is. There's no isms involved in that. It's just being responsible and doing the right thing for yourself and for people around you, for your community. I mean, that's really what it boils down to. I think, we've talked about this a few times on the show, and we had, Thomas was on, and one week we said we were talking about solutions, and a lot of the solutions are quite simple. They're not complicated, they're quite simple, and one of the solutions that we said was, if, say, 400,000 people, or 300,000 people in Ireland, donated €1 a month, right, into an account, just €1 a month, right, 300,000 people, that'd be €300,000 a month. Imagine how many problems we could sort with that, how many people we could help out with that. That doesn't involve the government. We can make the government redundant. The power of the people is there, we can do it. But people they're always looking for complicated solutions. They don't need to be complicated. They can be very easy, and we can sort it out in a very easy way. And that's one of them.
Yeah. I mean, lots of initiatives like that can play a role. I mean, ultimately, you do have to deal with the state power. Because as you said, I mean, these guys carry batons in their hands. Yeah. They're not going to go away. They're not going to allow you to undermine their authority and their control over the resources. So ultimately, you have to deal with them. And this is why my thinking is that with the people, we must empower ourselves and become the government for ourselves. And that's the issue we need to discuss, is how do we do that without infringing on our individual liberty, but there is a collective need for us to exercise that control, because if we don't, then those who are in power, that minority, will continue to rule over us and continue to bully and exploit the people.
Well, as you say that, for things to change, we have to change, because the people who are in power won't change because they don't want to change. So we, the people, have to change, and when we change, then they will change.
Yeah.
That's what I think we need to do. Steve, up to you for questions for Diarmaid there.
Yeah, if you type your name, Diarmaid, into the internet, there's a lot of information, a lot of news articles, kind of newsworthy articles where kind of people can kind of see where you're coming from. But there's also some information as well. Someone on one of the forums had some questions. I'm guessing you've probably seen these, but they were talking about Diarmaid O'Kaya, and it says it seems like you're A, not much of a government fan, B, you're not much of a political party. You're not a fan of any political parties. You see them all as liars. It says you're probably for a united Ireland in some form. You probably speak Irish. You blame the EU and the IMF and the Troika for a lot of the problems, and you seem to like rebel songs. What would you say to those?
No, each one is right. Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. Well, I like all kinds of music. I like Irish music. I like rebel songs. I like classical music as well.
Yeah.
But yes, I mean, IMF, European Union, they have, they're the latest big power, if you like, to literally rate this country of its resources. We have had a long time, as you pointed out, with our nearest neighbours doing the very same thing. And all of which began, it began long ago, but in a particular phase of it began, if you like, after the 1798 rebellion and the Act of Union, where we had our own House of Parliament and House of Lords there in Dublin, and the Lords were quizzed afterwards. They were actually interviewed and debates recorded, and they said, why did you sell your country? And one of the replies was, we were happy to have a country to sell, because they were in fear that the object which was of the people was that they would be deprived of all their property. Because if you know your history with the United Irishmen, and Tone's famous saying that because he had appealed to the gentry, if you like, and the landed section of Ireland to unite with them, and they hadn't, he said we would have to rely upon that most noble class, the men of no property. So these lords were in fear, but right since that time, the ruling classes, if you like, in Ireland have hitched their future to foreign dependence. Always they have relied upon England. Now a section of them want to rely upon the European Union. More of them want to look in the United States. So the state we have now, which isn't even the full nation state, the state we have, its economic policy is like a begging bowl. Like, please, sir, may I have some more? That's what they're going to our foreign masters with, rather than looking at the huge, huge wealth that is Ireland, huge resources in this country, that is what they always wanted from us, is our resources. And the sooner the people of Ireland realise that we live in a very rich country indeed, and the issue is we don't control that wealth. The sooner that realisation is out there, the better. Then people will start to see who are these partners we're supposed to have in Europe, and who are our friends in Europe. They're not very much friendly as they impose their debts on us, and as they exploit us and steal our resources. These aren't friends, these are people we should be wary of.
Can I just add in there, one of the things that we haven't talked about, which has to be said, and we had John Wilson here in the studio, actually, the Garda whistleblower, John Wilson.
Oh, yeah.
And John was on the show, and he stood for being independent. And I've said this before, the problem is that the people who are voting in these TDs, we vote in people who have no experience whatsoever. I mean, one government there a few years ago, when Brian Cowan was in government, there was 16 senior ministers around the table, and only 2 of them had a business. One was a solicitor, and the other one had a co-op or a bike shop or something, right? Yeah. Now, we keep hiring, because this one of the guys, or it could be a woman, they might be known locally, he's a nice guy, and they vote for this person. And this person hasn't a clue how to run a business or understand it. And then they're put in charge of a department, because it's the civil servants who don't change. The politicians change. The civil servants are sitting there, and they've been there for years, and they control everything. And they feed all the information to this new politician who goes in with the party, hasn't a clue about what area they're involved in, and they get moved around. I mean, in the corporate world, as you know, Diarmaid, if you have a background in IT, right? Like myself, right? They're not going to put the IT person in charge of marketing or sales. No. Why would you do that? Because you're not a sales or marketing person, you're an IT person. But the problem is over here is we hire these I'm going to say idiots, because they are. The politicians get in, they've no background or qualifications. And they're put in charge of departments, and maybe that's done on purpose to just throw them off. And then the civil servant controls everything, and they just feed the information to them. So the whole system is not just a cesspit of corruption, but it's all controlled and manipulated. And it's like, Dumb and Dumber. It really is. Yeah. And we have to stop voting for people just because they turn up at the hospital or turn up at the funerals or go to parties and you know all the locals. I'm sorry, but that, the people get voted for this, and you go, I'll vote for him because he turned up at my mother's funeral. I mean, what kind of, well,
it doesn't, in my opinion, it doesn't really matter. I mean, you're saying about the people, the politicians, one ran a bike shop and the other, I don't know, he didn't really have any skills. I think that's the way the civil servants want them. They don't want an independent thinker who's going to think for himself and who may cotton on to who's actually running the show. Look, as we said before, it's put out there. We all know what's going on. Diarmaid, I'm sure you've seen it as well. A show used to be on a long time ago, and I've alluded to this many, many times. Yes, Minister and yes, Prime Minister. I mean, classic. It's classic. They're showing you what's going on. They actually say, this is the rules of the game. Here it is, and people laughed at it because it is farcical.
Mm.
Yeah, but people laugh at it knowing it's actually true.
Yeah.
So the problem is, how do we break out of that? And that's where, again, like I've had this challenge against the Standards and Public Office Commission here, and that's why I was challenging that, is because the electoral system is completely in favour of all these political parties who I call private member clubs. Is what they are. They're private clubs. You join up and you engage in your giving and receiving of favours and so on, and the best person at that process of giving and receiving favours rises to the top. In other words, the most unprincipled people are at the top of these parties, and they rule, they control them, they get all the media look in, they get all the coverage on the print media, and they get financed, they get nearly 13 million a year through the state to finance their parties. And a citizen will say, like myself or anybody else, has to stand up against that machine. It's nearly impossible. And of course, they trade off the illusion that some of them have roots in the patriotic movement and all the rest of it. But it's all rubbish. It's a giant deception. No more, for example, than in the United States, you have a party which says it's the Democratic Party. They don't know what the word means. Neither does the so-called Republican Party understand the concept of being a Republican. Words mean nothing. In the same way as you have all these parties say they're for socialism, they don't know what the word socialism means. It's a joke. So why engage in all this phraseology and terminology, or why go around quoting all these isms, as somebody said there? It's just illusion spreading. That's not to say there is no basis for people having ideas about society and so on. Of course there is. But let's in the foremost have our own ideas. Let's take responsibility for making our analysis, along with carrying out action to discover how, because you can't have analysis without engaging in struggle to try to solve the problems. That is where ideas come from, and that is where understanding comes from, is true engagement. So let's have our own ideas. Let's move forward on that basis, and that would be, that is how we'll sweep aside all these candidates who only get elected because they're on a party ticket. They may not have two grey cells in their head, and most of them probably don't, but they're in because it's the party. So we have to break that. But don't despair, because it's not just up to us. Reality also rings a bell and will tell people the system is not working, and they will seek a new way forward. And the point is, we need to be organised when that time comes. I think, Lenin, I think, quoted famously, what is the condition required for revolution to happen? And it's a two-part thing. Number one, the powers that be must no longer be able to govern in the manner in which they have been governing. But the second side of it is that the people must no longer be prepared to accept to be ruled over in the manner in which they have been ruled over. So when those two conditions happen, you have the conditions for revolution. The point of necessity being, will the people be ready at that moment or not? That is why our preoccupation in the People's Convention is, one, to develop these ideas which are revolutionary because they promise change, actual change, and two, building the organisation amongst people through which the people then can act without vested interest controlling them, or without ideology or any pre-decided solution that the people should decide themselves. If we have that spirit of a movement, then we will change, and this is inevitable. Just as the feudal era came to an end, the era of the capitalist mode of production, if you like, is coming to an end, and imperialism being its highest stage, if you want to follow Lenin's word on it. These eras of society are coming, and the time will happen when human beings will look back and say, do you remember that time in history when ownership of the resources was in private hands? Wasn't that mad? People will say those things. So this is going to happen. The issue is how many steps and how much pain and struggle will humanity go through as we get there. But it is inevitable that we will get there.
Well,
it's not up to you or me.
Yeah, I think the pain and the struggle is where the change will take place, because the pain and the struggle is what's waking people up to it. And it's like I suppose a baby being born and going down the birth canal, and you know all the pain that's involved with childbirth. But when the baby's actually born, then the change has happened and all that pain is gone. But we have to go through. Society has to go through that that pain.
Yes. Unfortunately.
Now tell us.
That's the nature of nature evolving.
Yeah. Now tell us. Let's look at the solutions. Let's look at the positive side for the remainder of the show. There. Tell us what we have a few more questions as well. Do you want to go through the questions first, Steve?
Well, I've a comment in relation to how come Greece are up in arms over what's going on over there, and we seem to take it lying down. If you look at the chart in relation to fluoride, there's no fluoride in the public drinking water in Greece. There is fluoride in 73% of all the water, drinking water here in Ireland, unless of course you filter it out with a filter. But obviously we're moving on to solutions, so I'm guessing that we're going to be touching on the IREXIT.
Well, let's talk about that, yeah. I mean,
will it happen? Will it ever happen? Will we get to vote on it? And if we did, would the Irish people vote to stay because they'd be afraid that if they voted to get out of Europe, that we'd no longer have a song in the Eurovision Song Contest?
Yeah.
But you don't need to be in Europe anymore for being European.
Hey, that's the truth.
No straight answer is it?
It's all political anyway. So let's look at the solutions, yeah, and the IREXIT. Well, that's a kind of bone of contention because we're still under UK rule. So technically we are out of Europe because we're under UK rule. I mean, I don't know what's your take on that, Diarmaid.
Well, you could debate whether we're under UK rule or. Certainly the Irish people don't rule Ireland, that is for sure. But in the state that we're in here in the southern part of Ireland, we do have a constitution which is enacted by the people. So really, the people are sovereign. But as a full nation, north and south, the Irish people are a sovereign people. Nobody can take away that. No form of the state in the 26 counties or partition or anything can deny that. This is a fact of history. We are a sovereign people in the same way as nobody is allowed to enslave you as an individual. Equally, the nation which has emerged as a form of the social and historical development of the people, this is also a sovereign entity of our collective relationship, if you like. So we are sovereign people. We are being ruled over. You could debate whether our neighbours are the main element of that or not. But the issue is not to get hung up on who they are. The issue is for us to assert our sovereign right and control over our resources, control over our economy and our life and our cultural development and all those things. We should exercise that control rather than hand it over to anybody else. So we had on Europe Day this year on the 9th of May, it was a thing we had last year as well, so it's now a tradition. We had a public rally outside City Hall in Cork and with a number of speakers on the issue of IREXIT. But as part of it, we erected a banner, which was a big, it's a 5 metre long banner by about 1.5 metres height. And it had on it the same slogan as was up on Liberty Hall in the months leading up to the 1916 Rising, which read, "We serve neither king nor Kaiser, but Ireland." And I think that is the slogan which Irish people need to look at today, and especially with the confusion in the 6 counties and so on. The people of Ireland need to have our policy not dependent upon the UK and not dependent upon Berlin, and you might add not dependent on Washington either, because as a people we have all of the resources we need in abundance, 10 times over what we have, and we should exercise control over it and not be isolationist. We should trade with our nearest neighbour. They're our biggest trading partner, have always been, and that should continue. Equally, we should trade with Europe and with any other people in the world who want our produce. And as you said earlier, if we need electronics from Japan, I'm sure they'd love to have some of our nice fresh fish or beef or whatever we have to give them. We trade, as we've done for thousands of years. To listen to the European Union today, you'd think that, our friends and partners, we need them and we need their investors, as if they were investing for our improvement. All of these corporations invest for only one reason, is to make profit for themselves. And they use us and our skill and our resources to earn their private profits. They also use us as a simple laundering house to launder their profits worldwide. But none of which encourages the development of our domestic economy. Like, I remember as a young man, I grew up in County Waterford, and in Dungarvan town, in the surrounding area, there were at least 3 tanneries, right? For for leather curing and so on. There was a glue factory, there were co-ops, slaughterhouses, textiles, shoemaking, all this local industry in every town and village in Ireland existed back then. And it's all gone now, pretty much all of it gone. Even the co-ops now are all merged into giant co-ops, outside of the control of the small farmers even. So this is what has been undermined completely. I did the shopping in our household this morning, so I had to go and buy vegetables, and I was looking for carrots and turnip and stuff like that. And still today, it's a useful exercise for anyone to do. When you go to the supermarket, look at the country of origin of the vegetables, and you'll find they're from Egypt, North Africa, Spain, France, Central America, and nothing against the produce of those countries, but how can you compare, for example, onions grown in a desert in Egypt to onions grown in our fields? I mean, it just doesn't make sense. It only makes sense when you consider the conditions under which that food is produced in those foreign places. Like, there'll be big, huge, miles-long polytunnels in Egypt, for example, manned with what would be called slave labour, nothing else would call it. And the quality of it is that it's pretty much tasteless compared to fresh vegetables grown here. But how can you say that a country like Ireland, with the growing ability that we have, that small farmers can't compete on the market in Ireland because it's cheaper for someone to grow in Egypt and sell it to us here?
Well, the one thing that we've mentioned on OYM, and something that I'm working on with the local men's group, is a raised flower bed. And basically what the plan of attack is, when we have it put together, I'm hoping to have the basics put together this week, is to start growing my own veg. I'm experimenting. I'm no green finger, but I think everybody should be actually doing it. And, you know, we talk about, if you want to hit the corporate companies where it hurts, you know, grow your own veg, do your own food. And then obviously they realise that, well, people are doing it. Exactly. Yeah. And the more self-sufficient we get and the more independent we get and the less reliant we are in a nanny state, the better.
But if you think the advantages Ireland has is that, you know, people regard also our international images as a green island and so on. Why would we not have an economic plan in Ireland, for example, in the area of vegetable production, which would say, go down the road of organic production, which, incidentally, would be much more labour intensive, and therefore we now have jobs for those young people who can't, you know, find a permanent life in their own country. Why would we not do that and then sell that produce because it's cleaner and healthier and get much higher prices internationally for it? So we would win all the way around, but there's no psychology amongst the powers that be in Ireland for developing the economy on such a basis.
Well, again, you have to remember, Diarmaid, that there's people above them that know the chess game.
Yes.
And this is being controlled and manipulated and done on purpose. So, you know, we have to give... I'm sure there are politicians who are frustrated at the system. Like George Lee, he went into Fine Gael, I believe, and then left 9 months later because he realised that it was institutionalised and there was no point. So I'm sure there are, even the independents, they're frustrated because they know that they're being controlled probably by Europe, by a group of bureaucrats who, faceless bureaucrats, who we don't know, and this is all a chess game and they know exactly what they're doing. And Ireland is being controlled, so we have to look for that as well. I'm not going to put all the blame on the politicians because they are being controlled by the party whip system, and if they don't toe the line, they get put out. But at the end of the day, they should also come out, and if that's the case, like George Lee, and say our system is being controlled. I'm trying to bring in X, Y, and Z, and I'm being stopped. Why are we being stopped?
Yeah, in the course of our study on the politics in Ireland, we obviously had to pick up Bunnock Nahairn and read it again, you know. And Bunnock Nahairn tells you what the role of a TD is. And I'll quote you. It says, Dáil Éireann shall be composed of members who represent constituencies. Right? Period. That's Article, I think it's 621 or something. Anyway, that says that the role of every TD in Dáil Éireann is to represent a constituency. It doesn't mention anywhere in this constitution the words political party, not even mentioned. So if every TD is supposed to represent constituency, that's their constitutional duty. How come then they accept a party whip, which denies the constituency being represented, because it means they take instructions from head office. If TDs obeyed what the Constitution said, they would have to come to the constituencies to consult with the people and say, how would you be represented on this or that issue? But they don't. So like you're right in saying those TDs, if they had principles, they would object to what is going on and tell the world, look, we are being manipulated, we're being refused to be allowed to enact the law in a certain direction or anything else. They would come out and say it. But unfortunately, most of them remain mute and quiet.
Because they know politics is a gravy train. They go in for 4 or 5 years, get the big salary, have a nice pension on the way out. Why will they upset the apple cart? Because they're on a cushy number. Yeah,
absolutely. That's it.
You know, so again, I think it's down to the people. Now, I just had an inspirational idea that came to me while you were talking about certain things there, Diarmaid. And again, I'm just going to put it out there. I think that we should target maybe a county. We pick one of the counties and go, right, we're going to target just this county and we're going to aim to get independence in this county. So maybe set up a website, and this is only a name that came to me off the top of the head, and we're in County Meath. So maybe have a website called meathforchange.com, right? And that will have all the information of things that's going on in County Meath, the pluses and the minuses, the TDs who are involved, the TDs who voted against things, and the TDs who voted for things, and the independent people there. And then have everybody focus. Well, I mean, we might need to do this IT thing, because you're an IT person. Let's focus on it, rather than try and change Ireland, because it's too big at this moment in time. We pick a county and we go, right, this is the county we're going to focus on. And we focus all our energy on a particular county. It could be Cork for change. And we set up a website, and then everybody, and if anybody wants to know about what's going on in Cork in a good way, then what we do is, because I know there's good people out there, like Ken Smollen from the IDP party. Ken has gone out and he's feeding so many people with food banks and everything else. He's doing a sterling job. That's what the politicians should be doing in County Clare, but they're not. And Ken is frustrated because he stood as an independent. Again, he knows the system, what's going on. So if it was kind of Clare for change, then the website would show all the stuff that Ken's doing, and he's standing as an independent, and then all the stuff that the politicians are not doing in that county. And then say to people, and say, if you want to know what's going on in County Meath, and who's doing the good stuff and who's doing the bad stuff, and which groups are doing good stuff in County Meath and which groups are doing bad stuff or affecting it in County Meath. Or maybe just the good stuff. I don't know. You'd have to be careful on the legalities of things. Yeah. But you know where I'm coming from. So that's just... I
do, and you're right. I mean, there is a need for people to put forward independent initiatives in politics to break any of the parties, really, I think. Because as soon as that does happen, and incidentally, when you look at Ireland, we're pretty unique on a world scale, for independent politics. There's no other parliament in the world has anywhere near the kind of independent representation that exists in Ireland. I don't think there's any independent MPs in the UK, is there?
There is independent politicians in the UK, but they're few and far between.
Are they elected, do you think?
I don't know. I never really, when I lived over there, I never really got into politics.
I don't hear, you certainly don't hear about any for a long time.
Yeah.
And I know, for instance, if you look at Spain, do you know if you stand for election in Spain, you have to be a member of a party?
But that's ridiculous, isn't it?
Yeah, there you go. And it may be the same in Germany, in fact. Even though the Germans pride themselves saying there's no party whip. But I don't think you're allowed to stand unless you're in a party.
Well, how many people defines a party?
I don't know, but like in Ireland, it's a defined thing, because you have to register in the Oireachtas as a party and submit your rules and the directors and financial statements and all the rest of it. And you have to, obviously, any party, you have to sign up to accept their discipline and their ideas.
Well, see, there you go. There's the control system again.
Exactly, it is. Now, you have to say people have a right to associate and form parties if they wish, but what they do not have a right to do is to allow the party to substitute its idea over the rights of citizens and people's ideas. It's the right of the people to decide policy issues, not any party or private club. I don't care who they are or how worthy they think they are. It is the collective right of the people to decide matters. So no party should be allowed to substitute that, even though people should be allowed to organise, and they are, is their right, under any forms that they wish, but not to substitute that for what is supposed to be democratic control by the people.
Well, here's the funny thing. We have about 5 minutes left, Diarmaid. But here's the funny thing, right? Enda Kenny is leaving the government, right? And everybody's talking about Leo being the next Taoiseach. Now, I didn't agree to that.
Correct. Yeah.
How many people have agreed to that? I mean, they didn't ask the people.
No.
You know, they're just going ahead and doing their own private vote, you know?
Let me give you a very interesting one on that, because supposing Leo wins that contest, and supposing Micheál Martin backs him to be Taoiseach again, right?
Yeah.
Because he will need his backing. Do you remember when this current Dáil sat down and they looked at the numbers and they said, oops, we have a problem here because there was no clear majority? The first thing the Dáil has to do is elect a chairman, Cathaoirleach. And they said they couldn't do it by simple majority, so they changed the rule. They said, let's elect the Cathaoirleach by proportional representation. And within an hour, they had Cathaoirleach decided. Then the next order of business was, let's elect a Taoiseach. But they wouldn't do this, even though they had the very same problem. In other words, no one has a majority, but they wouldn't take the same solution, i.e., let's do it by proportional representation. Instead, they said, let's do a backroom deal between whoever we can get, and we'll go behind closed doors and work it all out outside of the view of the people.
Yeah.
But what would be wrong with having a proportional representation and let Dáil Éireann elect a Taoiseach? Because the possibility in there is that you could have an independent elected as the Taoiseach.
Yeah, well, listen,
no, they won't listen. It's manipulated.
Yeah, well, that's it. That's the trouble, and people need to realise this. And again, people going around and say, "Oh yeah, I understand politics." You know, I think in Australia, you're legally required to vote, but maybe should be the other way, that people have to pass a test, a multiple choice test, before they actually vote, to see if they understand what politics is all about.
If you think about that now, you couldn't go there.
Well, I don't know. I'm just,
that's appropriate thinking, you know.
I mean, yeah, you know what I'm getting at, because there are people voting. You know, don't
the French have some system that they had white ballot voting or something? When it was, when people didn't want to vote for Macron or Le Pen, they put in a white page, and there was a whole percentage who were voted saying they're not interested in either candidate.
Yeah.
But it would be appropriate to have something to say, none of the above.
What is the percentages of the electorate having to vote for a party before, is kind of, isn't there a percentage of the population have to vote, and if it goes under that number, then it's a kind of stalled or stale or stalemate or something? Nobody can be elected because there has to be a certain amount of people voting.
No, not in Ireland, no.
No. So you could have 5 people voting for a party, and if nobody else voted, bar them 5, that party would get in.
No, not in Ireland, no. No, you vote for individual candidates in Ireland.
Right.
In different countries, you have voting lists and so on, and you can vote for a party, and then the party distributes that. But in Ireland, no, it's the candidates.
Okay,
even though the ballot paper and the whole system is biased in favour of party candidates. Okay,
so let's turn that around. The people the people don't vote for the candidates, right? And say, I don't know, Fianna Fáil in total get, they have 24 candidates, and they only get 24 votes. So they get 1 vote per candidate. I mean, would we be able to legally form a government?
No, they wouldn't. I presume in that context, somebody else would have gotten more votes.
Well, no, assuming that nobody did.
Oh, well, then they'd be in.
They'd be in. See, this is what I mean. What I'm trying to get to here is that surely if the population is, say, 5 million, and say 3 million vote, say 300,000 people vote out of the 3 million, well then there should be another vote or referendum or something. Because
yes. But, I mean, for that situation to happen, you'd be looking at a serious crisis in the country, that people would be so disaffected not to turn up to vote even.
Well, it might get to that. We're just coming to the last few minutes. Do you want to add anything in there, Steve?
Yeah, I just want to say very quickly that Shane on the chat room, thanks Shane. Shane says you can only vote for the party in Spain, not the politician. The party then put in who they want. Thanks for that, Shane.
Because Shane lives in Spain. We know Shane's over there.
Shane in Spain.
Shane in Spain. Right, Diarmaid, a big thank you for coming on to the show. It's been a great chat, and we're going to... I think we'll have to do it again in a few months' time, get an update on what you're doing down at Cork and all your team down there. It was great catching up on the Irish side and on what's been happening. So thanks for coming on. I'm going to pass you over to Steve. Steve's going to get all your contact details and where people can find you. Steve.
Thank you.
It's been very educational, I must say. You've done very well on the chat room. You've been cordially invited to the fictitious pub crawl, which means you've made it big with the listeners. So if that ever comes to fruition, you're on the guest list, no matter what anyone says. For those who want to find out more about Diarmaid O'Kyle and the work that you do you want to give us your website there, Diarmaid, and we'll get that up there in the chat room.
A very simple website is The Future. If you take The Future, all one word, TheFuture.ie. Thefuture.ie is my own website. And from there's links all over the place to Facebook, Twitter, and other networks.
And I will say... Sorry, go ahead, sorry.
And we also operate the People's Convention website, CPPC, Charlie.ie.
And I will say that if you just put Diarmaid's name, Diarmaid, comma Cadhla, the Irish spelling. If you just put that into a search engine, thefuture.ie is the first website that comes up anyway.
Yeah. Well, I'd be delighted to hear from anybody. I want to make connections with everybody interested in a democratic future in our country and in our world. I want to be connected with them to exchange ideas and initiatives and to drive things forward. Because connected, we are stronger. And that's what we need to get to.
Totally agree. All right, Diarmaid, just stay with us there. We're going to pop off to a musical break and we'll be back after this.
This is Open Your Mind Radio on OYMradio.com, UnitedWeStrike.com and PeoplesInternetRadio.com.
And we're back. Yes, we are both running around the studio here with the Hoovers, the vacuum cleaners, going dancing away to that song. Chris, you are on the money. Yes, indeedy. What we also forgot to mention in relation to Diarmaid's website, that is thefuture.ie, Diarmaid is going to be releasing a free paper. It's called The People's Paper. I think he said it's issue 5 will be coming out very, very shortly. If you pop along to the website that we mentioned, thefuture.ie, the links to all that you need are there, including Facebook as well. So he said just look him up on Facebook. He did say the Facebook name is an Irish one, on Fubble something or other. I can't, I'm not even going to try and pronounce it, I do apologise. But yeah, just pop along to thefuture.ie and you will see information where you can get a copy of the free paper.
Brilliant stuff. We got a comment on People's Internet Radio from one of the listeners there, and they said, "Hi guys, we enjoyed a very successful German New Medicine seminar this weekend. We'd like to thank you for helping us promote it as we were supported by some of your listeners. Many thanks again from Margie and Sean in Cork." So if you remember, we had James McCumsky on the show talking about German New Medicine. I'm still reading the book. Very interesting book, enjoying it, learning a good few bits from it. And I think it would be great to have that over here as well as another way to actually treat symptoms. And again, we might get James back on another time on that. Now, we did put out, last week we said that we would like to, at OYM, we'd love to break into OYM TV and start doing OYM TV and doing interviews. And we got approached by a celebrity who's asked us, would we do an interview with them, like a TV interview? And we said, yes, no problem at all. Happy to do it, but we don't have the equipment to do it. And we asked if we could get a lend of a camera, or if somebody was a videographer, if they wouldn't mind doing it, that would be fantastic. And we did get contact by a listener. I'm not going to mention any names at this moment in time, but we did get contacted by a listener who offered to, which is very, very nice of him, to actually purchase a camera for OYM. And it's a very, very nice offer. So we have forwarded over the bits and pieces he asked us to send over regarding the what kind of camera and stuff like that. It's a very, very generous offer. I have to say it's really, really nice. So we've left it with that listener, and we'll see. We'll keep you posted. We'll let you know what happens. And if that happens, that's brilliant. If for whatever reason it can't happen, there's no big deal. We will go back to plan A, which will be to
rob a bank.
Get a lens of a camera, or else we'll try and find somebody. But no, it's a very, very, very generous offer by a listener, and I mean, that'd be brilliant if it does come to fruition. It'd be very good. But that's the news. Now, next week we have on a chap called Neil Saunders. Now, Neil has been on the show before. It's been a long time since Neil has been on the show, but he's a mind control researcher. And again, great information from Neil when he was on the show. If you want to check out one of Neil's old interviews, pop over to YouTube. I believe he's on one of our YouTube videos. I think he should be up there. He hasn't been on for probably about 3 or 4 years, I think. So for the new listeners of OYM, you're in for a treat. So Neil's going to be on next week, and because he was talking about the television and the scan rate on the TV. And when you walk into a room and you say to somebody, what's on TV? And they go, nothing, but they're sitting there watching the TV. And so he was talking about all the mind control and the words TV program with the PROGRAMME. And if you divide program and ME, you have program me. And then if you take the word license and divide that up, and you have it lie, L-I-E, sense, lie to your senses. So they use all these spells or spelling to just to kind of control us in how they do their magic and weave their spells. So it'd be quite interesting to get. Now we have 3 or 4 years down the line from speaking to Neil, so the information I'm sure is going to be good from Neil. And we're also putting the feelers out for certain speakers, for certain guests to come on the show. Again, we've emailed a few people. No emails coming back from them as of yet. We're always trying to get people on, and we get emails from our listeners going, can you get such and such on, such and such on? And we do email them. But sometimes they don't email us back. They don't get back to us. So unfortunately, there's not much we can do about that. But we do try our best. But the plan of attack will be to try and to expand into OYM TV, and so we can do 3D, 3D. I hope it's 3D. We can do video interviews, and I'm not saying it's going to be like what Ben did with the Irish independent networks. It won't be that snazzy. But basically,
it'll be better.
Yeah, right.
We wish.
But we hope to kind of get into that, and then obviously throw in the interviews. I don't know where I'm going to find the time, because I don't have enough time as it is, the way things are going. But as I say, this week we're hoping to put together the prototype of the raised flower bed. And it's nothing fantastic, by the way. It's old bits of wood that I had lying around. I had an old gate that was lying around. And basically we're going to chop up the gate. We're going to make it into this raised flower bed. And I'll take a few photos and we'll stick it up on Facebook and send it out and show it to you when it's all kind of painted and done. And the idea is just purely to kind of grow your own food.
Sorry, I'm just having a bit of a laugh here. I had an old gate that was lying around. Yeah, his wife came home one day and says, Alan, where's the gate? And Alan says, I don't know, but we got a raised flower bed out the back.
Is that like taping over your wedding video with a sports program or something? So, if the missus says, them gates, where's the gates? Oh, did we want them gates? I didn't know. Oh, I thought they were there, that they could be used for something.
Well, look, I'll just dismantle the flower beds and I'll put them back.
No, the actual gates were blown down. Basically, they were up against the wall. We had a bad wind and they weren't the best gates of it, and they were blown down. So we're recycling.
That's your excuse anyway.
Yeah, recycling the wood and using the wood to build it. And it's only going to be very basic, but basically, as I say, it's all about growing your own food. We're going to give it a go. Now, we did send a copy of the Silent Green to Bernadette, and she said she was going to be looking forward to it. And Bernadette actually did send a DVD and the book, and I believe that your missus has 4 stabs on the book to read.
Well,
So
I won't be reading the book.
remind me when before you go that I'll give you the.
I'm still reading Anne and Barry. Going to school.
Anna Berry. Okay, so basically that's the news. I don't think it's just there's an awful lot going on globally. As I say, we have been told, and as of now it might change, that in the next few weeks Trump is going to get ousted and they're going to put Hillary in, and if that happens, then it's going to be chaos. And she's going to go for Russia because of all this kind of supposedly Russian hacking and rigging the voting and all that kind of stuff. Because she'll be really angry that the Russians rigged the voting and she didn't get in, and she's going to, get back at them. This is the whole kind of plan. If it happens, well, we'll just have to, see what happens anyway. What's on your agenda this week? Have you got them planned?
Yeah, I'm nothing really. I'm just going to be kind of paying close attention to what's happening in the Irish political scene for a change, because normally I don't, but I mean it's going to be interesting to see what happens and who kind of takes over from what's his face, Dame Enda Kenny. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see who takes over there. Will it be Leo Varadkar? Or I suppose it really depends on who's hated the most. Whoever's hated the most is going to get the gig.
Do we do the X Factor thing? Leo Varadkar!
Right, I've not seen it, so I don't know how it works. Okay. Come on down, is that it?
No.
Leo Varadkar?
They have a buzzer.
Oh, okay.
Britain's Got Talent.
Can we get buzzers in here?
Ireland's got wasters, I don't know.
Oh, yeah, and tossers.
Yeah.
Anyway, I just want to mention as well, Ireland Awakens Conference, in conjunction with Miles Johnson's Basis project. That's going to be taking place in the Talbot Hotel in Stillorgan on the weekend of Friday, Saturday and Sunday. That's the 15th, 16th and 17th of September. The 3-day event will comprise of 16 national and international speakers covering a wide range of subjects from UFOs, alien abductions, controlled remote viewing, search, sacred sites, the elite mind control, ritual child abuse, and many, many more. One of the main reasons for this conference is to get up-to-the-minute new information from an Irish perspective and get it out into the public domain. We're also very excited that Miles Johnson is speaking here in Ireland for the first time in many years. Kerry Cassidy from Project Camelot will be giving a presentation on both the Saturday and the Sunday. And myself and Alan will also be there as well.
Brilliant stuff. Okay, we're going to let you go. Have a good week. Stay safe. It's Alan James signing off. And if you have any news, send us an email and let us know. Take care. See you next week. Bye-bye.
Okay, and my final note is stay tuned for Vin. Vin is up next with Austin Byrne from the International Banking Investigation Group. And Vin says he's going to be doing the video and the audio as well. So he's going to be wearing his best clobber. So stay tuned for that. Okay, we'll catch you all again next week. Until then, take care. Bye-bye.
Open your mind.